he just went low. He's in his head. He's in his head. He's open. His head wide open. Cracked open in the face.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Marman 2100 back with another episode of How's My Team. So we're going to talk about a few games, obviously, to go over. We've got Liverpool versus Burnley. We've also got the Wanderers men's team going up against Newcastle Jets, and the women's team also playing at home against the Brisbane Roar. Also, probably just going to mention Seattle Seahawks at the end of this as well. Obviously, they haven't actually played yet when I'm recording the intro to this video as of yet. They play in a couple of hours, or at least the game starts in a couple of hours. So we'll talk about that at the end. We'll talk about that on Monday when I record the ending of this video on Monday, and give you a few updates on like Premier League tables and A-League tables and stuff like that. So we'll get to that, but yeah, let's get started with the episode. So I might as well start with Liverpool, even though they played this morning and we had a few games obviously before that. I'll eventually obviously go when I do the outro to this video. I will go over like the Premier League table updated, because obviously there's a few games still to play yet, but and maybe some positions that might change. But it was Liverpool up against Burnley. They were playing at home at Anfield, and it was a 1-1 draw to Burnley. So pretty disappointing in terms of result. Yes, it is a point, but it is a point against another team in the relegation zone, which means that for the first time in a long time, Liverpool, and there was a stat for this, Liverpool haven't actually won at home against any of the promoted teams from the Championship into the Premier League for the first time in a long time, because obviously we drew at home with Leeds not too long ago. Obviously, I think that was like last week before. Obviously against Burnley, and then obviously the draw against Sunderland as well. So yeah, it's, it is obviously they're all draws, which is great because obviously you're getting points out of those games. But realistically, two of those three teams at the moment are playing in or out, just outside of the relegation zone. So it's not an ideal situation. Liverpool were up 1-0 at half-time. Florian Wirtz scored in the 42nd minute. Fantastic goal from him as well. So pretty much on top of it. Then Marcus Edwards from Burnley scored in the 65th minute. And yeah, not much else to say about this. It's a bit disappointing, especially with the defence dropping a goal as well, again. From Liverpool. Obviously, it's not a loss, which also is not a bad situation. But obviously, Liverpool being in the top four going into this game, and Burnley, obviously still fighting to get out of the relegation zone at this point. It's pretty disappointing in that front, because there is a big stark difference. Now, I understand it's the Premier League; anybody can beat anybody. We've seen it with Wolves drawing with Manchester United when Manchester have been on a roll, and they ended up getting up over Man City in the derby today, as well as Arsenal also dropping points as well. So very interesting week in terms of teams near the top, but there's obviously Aston Villa haven't played yet, so Arsenal at this point has still got a 7-point lead going into the rest of the weekend. But Villa haven't played yet, and Villa end up playing against Everton. So if they end up getting a win out of that, they'll make that 4 points the gap between first and second place, and Villa will jump Manchester City. So ultimately, at this point, Arsenal are on top with 50 points from 22 games. So, good result, obviously, for them to obviously have 50 points at this point in the season. Obviously, still got 14 games left in the Premier League season, still to go. 15. Really wish I wouldn't do that during videos. Second at the moment is Manchester City on 43 points. As I said, it was a 7-point gap between first and second. Aston Villa in third position with a game in hand. Liverpool still stay in fourth position, though they do have that margin extend to 7 points between third and fourth position, even with Aston Villa's result in the balance at the moment, obviously with that extra game in hand, because obviously it'd be 7 points between Manchester City, who will be on 43, and Liverpool being on 36. So not ideal, especially dropping some points against some teams that are near the bottom. Not good for Liverpool. Obviously, Manchester United move up into fifth position with the win in the Manchester Derby to 35 points. Chelsea also jump to sixth position with 34. They must have got a win as well. Brentford dropped to 7th position on 33 points. Sunderland jumped to 8th position, also on 33 points, just their goal difference there being the difference. Newcastle dropped down to 9th position on 32, but they do have a game in hand. Fulham is in 10th position on 31. Then Brighton in 11th with 29, as well as Everton with both of those teams with games in hand at this point, so they could jump as well. Crystal Palace in 13th position with 28 points after getting a pretty disappointing result for them as well. Obviously their coach, their manager I should say, is leaving at the end of the season. And I get some people getting upset for that, and ultimately it's a situation where it's like, some people will say, oh, you should have waited until, after the season was done or something like that. And it's like, well, Jurgen Klopp did the same thing for Liverpool, and not too many batted an eye about that and having an issue. There were some that had an issue, obviously, with it, especially when it comes to like some of the bad results that come in that season before Arne Slot was added into the team, added into the managing role to take over from Klopp. Some people will say obviously that it kind of overshadowed Liverpool's race to the title that year, but it's one of those things where it's like, he's said that he's going to go. Like, you can't really commend too much on the results on the field because of that, and especially when they sell and trade their captain. Like literally the day before a game, doesn't help them with the results as well. So, they kind of got a little bit of a pass on that, because that's not ideal. Then in 14th position we got Tottenham Hotspur on 27. They actually lost to West Ham, so that makes things a little bit interesting there. 15th is Bournemouth with 26. It's a huge fall from grace from them, because they were up well into the top 5 like 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, and now it's completely flipped. They've like 6th position from the bottom, so it's a huge flip. But again, dropping points, and also the fact that middle segment, like we're talking Liverpool on 36, and like it's 10 points difference between 4th position and 15th position right now. So it's pretty close in terms of the middle of the field, and even then some of the games haven't been played for Newcastle yet. Brighton, Everton, and Bournemouth still got a game in hand as well, so they could also jump as well, making that a little bit more congested in the middle as well. 16th position is Leeds United on 25. 17th position is Nottingham Forest on 22 points. They picked up a draw with Arsenal actually. So that was very, very good result for them. Keeps them out of the gap, and it keeps that gap between 17th position outside the relegation zone and 18th position inside, with West Ham with 17, Burnley in 19th position with 14. So it's only 5 points between 17th and 18th, and it's 3 points between 18th and 19th right now. So that's not ideal. That's not something that can completely be unfeasible for either of those teams, whether it's Burnley or West Ham, to get out of that relegation zone. And even Wolves at this point, if they're still on the bottom, they've still got 7 points. Yes, they've still got a game in hand. So ultimately, in terms of games that haven't been played, obviously it's Aston Villa and Everton. Scroll down. Newcastle against Wolves. They've got to play yet. Brighton play Bournemouth as well. So yeah, pretty interesting results in terms of games coming up for the Premier League. And we'll give an updated table. I'll give an updated table tomorrow on that. But in terms of upcoming fixtures, this week is going to be very, very important. In fact, actually, in the next couple of weeks, obviously, the rest of the season is going to be very important. But this next couple of weeks is going to be very important because now we're going to switch our head to Champions League football because we've got 2 games, obviously, in that to go in the space of about a week or so. So it'll be on Thursday, my time at 7 a.m. We travel to the Orange Velodrome, which I believe is in France, Marseille, against Marseille. It's a huge game in the Champions League, in Champions League standings, because obviously those 2 teams are in the knockout stage right now, not in the top 8. Obviously, Liverpool are in 9th position in terms of the Champions League table, so any points that they can get, including wins, especially wins in the last 2 games, would be very vital to knock on the door to get into that top 8 and go through without actually having to play any playoff games against teams in the middle, the congested middle in the Champions League competition. Then on Sunday we play away from home as well to Bournemouth, so we play Bournemouth next on Sunday, 4:30 my time, and then obviously next Thursday we play our last Champions League game of the early stage in playing against Karabag at home as well. So I think with the way that the standings are in the Champions League, I don't think Liverpool can drop right out and be out. They'd have to lose both games and have to lose both games pretty handily to actually get knocked out at this point. But obviously Liverpool in 9th position, Martial in 16th position, and Karabag in 22nd position, obviously before games have started for this upcoming week. So we'll see what the standings are after that. But obviously, a lot of teams that are on the fringe right now, Arsenal have already confirmed their place. Bayern Munich in 2nd, PSG in 3rd, Manchester City in 4th, and Atalanta in 5th position, going from 18 points to 15 and then 13. I think if any of those teams up the top get wins, and pretty much all those teams have favourable games against teams that are inside the knockout stage, if not already basically on the chopping block on the bottom of the group. They should be able to get through relatively easy with a win this week for all of them. Inter Milan, Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid all on 12 points, with obviously Liverpool obviously being outside. It's only just by goal difference there. They just got to keep on winning. If any of those teams lose any games, so Inter Milan play Arsenal this week, which is going to be a really, really, really big game. I think in terms of the Champions League, that's arguably probably going to be the biggest one. for teams in the top 8 in terms of the Champions League table, because that's first versus sixth right now, and it's only 6 points difference between the two teams, but that's two big clubs playing against each other. Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid have relatively good teams to play against, but you never know. Obviously, Borussia Dortmund in 10th position, they play Tottenham, so that's 10th and 11th, trying to play to get in to the top 8. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the results will be for the Champions League this upcoming week, because it could change a lot of things at the top. And then obviously playing against Bournemouth as well, playing on the weekend, which would be great before we head back home to play our last Champions League game of the regular Champions League season, and then we'll go from there. But 1-1 draw with Liverpool and Burnley. Pretty disappointing. So with that, we'll move back to the A-League, and we'll start with the A-League, the women's game, and we'll talk about the Wanderers women. Then we went up against Brisbane Roar at home, and it was looking like it was going to be a really, really good result, and it ended up being a 1-1 draw. So pretty disappointing. I guess in some ways it's disappointing in terms of how this draw came to be, because it was 0-0 at half time. The Wanderers scored in the 83rd minute from Ella Buchanan. Pretty good goal. Obviously, it was like kind of I wouldn't say it was a chip in, but it was well executed play again from the substitutions, which obviously the substitutions actually in the last few weeks have actually been really good in terms of the team. Obviously, we've had a couple of games and we obviously lost last week, not helping things, but obviously with the subs coming on, it's kind of given the team a little bit more of reinvigoration during a game. So we led right up until the 5th minute of stoppage time at full time, when Brisbane scored one back, and the defense was pretty awful in that play, because the defender, the goalie had it covered, and the defender has come in from the left, trying to defend on their outside shoulder, and the ball's been chipped back in or cut back in from Jansen to take a shot, and obviously have a bigger target, because obviously then you'll be playing both sides of the goal, whether you go with your right foot, whether it goes left, or whether it actually just fades to the right. And the defender gets really close to the goalkeeper, so the goalkeeper has no chance to really they kind of fall over and try to stumble, because of the close proximity between them and the defender, because the defender crosses right in front and kind of blocks the goalkeeper, and ends up going from a situation where it could have been a right foot right side play into the goal to a left side shot, and the goalkeeper does not have enough time to try and block it. And it really messes things up, and literally they have a situation, and it's not a great result ultimately in the way that was the way that it went, because it's pretty disappointing after holding them out for so long and not having them score, because they had a few shots on. Some of them were relatively close and really good shots on from Brisbane. It looked like it was going to be our second win of the year, and then just to lose the lead like that, it's pretty disappointing in terms of that. Obviously, yes, it is a point for the Wanderers women's team. Don't know why I keep yawning. I really hate doing that. It's pretty disappointing in terms of the women, because they worked really hard all game to make sure that they try to come away with all 3 points, and to have a goal like that happen in the 5th minute of stoppage time out of 6 minutes in stoppage time, because I can see in the highlights the actual timer, and they had 6 minutes extra of stoppage time, and to not only concede the goal, we can concede the goal in that way off a mistake. Yes, okay, maybe the goalkeeper might not have got to it, but the goalkeeper did everything right. Obviously, they were the last, like, obviously defense between them and, like, the attacking player and the goal themselves. Obviously, the defender was coming in and, closing in terms of speed, obviously because the attacking player would have slowed down a little bit especially to cut the ball back inside the box towards the middle. Obviously, they've got to slow down for that. If you can do that pretty fast, you're really good on your feet if you can do that in speed, especially going laterally. But yeah, it's one of those things where the goalkeeper, yes, they moved out of the bar, like they moved out of their inside box in the 6 yard box, moved up to the defender, tried to close the gap, tried to make make them, because as a goalkeeper, and I've played a goalkeeper before, so and my cousin, one of my younger cousins, plays in the league down here and plays goalkeeper. They've actually played for, I think they played for IPL Leichhardt or one of those teams, and not their first grade team, but obviously it was like the upcoming as an upcoming player. So he's getting some taste in some like NSL football, which is like the second tier league under the A League. So pretty competitive football, obviously, as a goalkeeper. And one of the things that you have to do when you're a goalkeeper, especially, they train you to make sure that you look big in the goal box. So when you're defending a shot, giving the attacking player less time to take a shot is always the best way, because obviously in that situation, obviously you're hurrying the attacking player to make a shot or to make a play to get around you. So obviously their reaction time is going to be a lot better, and they're going to be quick on their feet. They're going to think. Then obviously don't want to panic either and get into a situation like that. And it's very easy to panic in that sort of scenario. So ultimately, as a goalkeeper, and this doesn't always work for every shot, but if you're the last defender between yourself, like an attacking player, and the goal, as a goalkeeper, you want to reduce the amount of time and the amount of distance between the attacking player and you, especially if you've got a decent amount of speed as a goalkeeper. You want to maximize the amount of space that you can work with. You want to minimize their space in terms of taking shots, because obviously they're going to have plenty of space to miss when you close in. Or you might get a block of any type. Like you might get a block on the body, you might get a block on the arm. As a goalkeeper, unless you're outside of the big box, like your actual goal box, where obviously that will be, obviously if it doesn't hits anything above your leg or your chest, obviously it hits your arms or something. Like if you hit your arms outside the box, then obviously it'll be, a penalty that'll go against you as a goalkeeper. But if it hits your head, it hits your body, hits your legs, especially even outside the box, like the actual big box, that's fine. You've blocked a shot, and it shouldn't get to that scenario where a keeper is going well outside of their box to make a shot like that, to make a play. But ultimately, you're trying to make yourself, like, your frame big. Like, you're trying to block, like, so you can imagine the keeper did everything right that they could. Obviously, when you're goalkeeping, your reaction time is going to be really good too. The defender kind of messes up there. And it's pretty disappointing because, yes, they come away with a point, so that's great. But they could have got 3 points out of that with that mistake not going against them. So at the moment, in terms of the table, because there's still a couple of games left to play with the women today, obviously Central Coast and Perth. And then obviously we got some games from previous rounds being played on Tuesday and on Wednesday. Obviously, Brisbane against Manchester. I'd say I do it every video. I did all right the last couple of the weeks, and I've done it again. So Melbourne City and Brisbane on Tuesday, and then the Jets and Adelaide on Wednesday. So there's one game left, obviously this week. Obviously, I can give an update properly on the table tomorrow, but at this point in time, yes, the Wanderers are still on the bottom, but we'll get to that in a second. So we'll say Melbourne City are on the top. They took over Canberra United. Canberra United lost again late yesterday to Wellington, so not an ideal result for them in the afternoon because they've dropped points again. So yes, Melbourne City on the top with 19, Canberra United in second with 18. Central Coast at the moment is on 17 points in third position, but with a win can actually jump both of those teams, which is crazy to me to say that because obviously Central Coast were right towards the bottom like about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and now they've kind of flipped the script again and getting close to the top again. Fourth is Melbourne Victory with 16. Fifth position is Newcastle Jets, also on 16 points. It's just their goal difference as being the difference there. Sixth position is Wellington with that win over Canberra United, so they move to 15 points. Perth get pushed out, obviously going into the game today. They're also on 15 points, but again, like I said, they could jump to about second or third position with a win. Eighth position is Brisbane with 14, obviously getting a point out of the game against the Wanderers. Ninth position, also on 14 points, is Adelaide. 10th position is still Sydney FC with 10. And obviously on the bottom is Wanderers with 6. So we kind of closed the gap a little bit to Sydney. Obviously they had the bye this week. Close it to 4 points, which is good. And that's another goal on the season, so that makes it 9. With Sydney FC still being at the bottom in terms of the Women's League, in terms of total goals this year with 6. So got a little bit of a gap there between them. But it's not a good situation because we should have got away with 3 points there and actually closed in on Sydney FC being at the bottom, which is pretty disappointing. We go up against the Mariners on Saturday coming up. That's our next game for the women, so it's going to be very, very vital points there. And then there's the Big Blue for Sydney FC against Victory for them on Sunday. So we'll see how those results pan out, and hopefully the result actually turns out to be a good one for the Wanderers women. But yeah, 1-1 draw against Brisbane and losing, dropping 2 points out of that game in the last couple of minutes of stoppage time. It's pretty disappointing in terms of that, but they played relatively well for pretty much the rest of the game. It's just obviously dropping their goal very late is not something that the teams wanted, and it's actually starting to rain. So if you hear that, it's starting to rain again, like the upteenth time this week. And with that, we'll move on to the men's team. The men's team went up against Newcastle Jets at home. And it was another disappointing result because it was 2-1 loss to the Wanderers. So ultimately, this game wasn't really competitive. In terms of the full game, the Wanderers really didn't switch on until like the 80th minute of the game. So they played like the last 10, 15, like the last 10, I think it was 13 minutes because I think it was 3 minutes stoppage time, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. But yeah, the last 10, 15 minutes they were switched on. They got a goal back in the 83rd minute, but pretty disappointing result considering they were up 2 goals to nil Newcastle. So we won in the second half after quite a few shots, obviously from the Jets that went wayward in the second half. But pretty disappointing when the women's team is actually playing a lot better than the men's team right now. So Newcastle scored in the 15th minute. I think it actually was a penalty shot as well. Actually, no, it doesn't have the P next to it, so it wasn't a penalty shot. So there was a penalty leading into this goal, I think, close to, if not a couple of minutes beforehand. So they scored in the 15th minute and then the 38th minute in the first half. The Wanderers scored in the 83rd minute from our sub, Luau. First goal in the A-League for him as well. And it was a damn good strike as well, I will say. Great goal from him. And if we can have him and Ibuzuki, who was a signing over the end of last week, going into this week, obviously he was an international player. Obviously he's played in Adelaide before. He's also played I think he's played at Victory, if not Melbourne City. I kind of doubted myself then because I was going to say Manchester City again on that. But we've got him as a striker. And having them both as strikers for a team has actually kind of done good for the team because actually they were both striking. There was a header chance with both of them a couple minutes after the Wanderers scored, where they could have almost scored again. It just didn't come off well and kind of went wide of the goal. But striking in the way that they did, and with the subs coming on, the team looked a lot better in the second half, like towards the end of the second half. But we really need to start playing a full 90 minutes of football because this is, again, another situation where we've basically dropped points. I know Newcastle are a good team this year, obviously won the Australia Cup against a really good Heidelberg team and played well, decent amount during this season. But it's pretty disappointing in that we're only just now into double digits in terms of scoring goals this year. And realistically, the next team that's down here is 3 goals ahead of us, which is Brisbane at this point in time. And yeah, it's pretty disappointing. Obviously, 2 games left to play in terms of the table. The fact that we've only scored 10 goals all year in terms of this season so far, and we were most dominant team scoring last year. I know, obviously, like I said, some personnel have changed. Obviously, I get it. Between last year's team, last season's team, and this season's team, but not this much of a difference at this time of the year. Ultimately, was striking well at the start of this season last year, and when doing anything but this season is pretty disappointing in terms of the table. At the point of the table, at this point in time, Auckland FC are still up on the top with 24 points. They did actually drop points. They actually lost very, very late in their game. Where is the result? I know it's here somewhere. 2-1 to Melbourne City. Melbourne City, I think, scored 2 late in the second half. Not in stoppage time, I think, well outside of that. But they dropped 2 in the space of about 10-15 minutes in the second half. In fact, actually, I think it was 0-0 at half-time for both teams. If not, Auckland might have went up just before half-time. So they dropped points again and dropped 3 crucial points because Sydney FC still got a game in hand for themselves, still to play today in terms of recording this. They play at Allianz against Wellington. Wellington obviously being in 10th position at the moment, but they're in 2nd position, 2 points behind with 22 points in 2nd position, 2 points behind Auckland FC. Obviously leading into, obviously I'll give you a revamped table tomorrow, but crucial game dropped by Auckland, and it's another team that's actually won against Auckland after Newcastle have done it twice at least, and also Perth obviously handing them their first loss ever last season. 3rd place is Newcastle with that win. They jumped to 21 points. 4th is Brisbane, also on 21. It's just their goal difference being the difference there. Melbourne City, with their win, move up to 5th position with 20 points. Then it was the original rivalry with Victory and Adelaide. Adelaide getting a very, very late winner in stoppage time to jump to 6th position on 19 points, though that game was full of controversy and, disallowed goals by VAR on both teams. Kind of happy that Victory did end up losing that. It was a situation that their goal got overturned because obviously there was a player in front that was obscuring the vision of the keeper, even though the keeper had probably had no chance to save it. Again, as a Liverpool fan, we've seen that this year ourselves going for and against our team. So it just happens in football. That happens in football all the time. And, say what you will, maybe it shouldn't have been rubbed out, but they're very consistent. It's a very consistent rule that's shown up a few times this year in multiple leagues, and the result has pretty much almost been the same the entire time. They can complain about it as much as they want, but, something's got to give and some things won't. Then 7th position is MacArthur Bulls. They play against Central Coast Mariners today as well, so they've got a game in hand themselves. Then 8th position is Melbourne Victory with 17, obviously dropping points against Adelaide. 9th position is Perth Glory on 16. 10th position is Wellington, obviously with a game in hand. They're on 15 points at the moment. Western Sydney obviously in 11th position with 12, and Central Coast Mariners at the moment with a game in hand still on the bottom with 11 points. Pretty disappointing result, especially leading into Sydney Derby, which is not obviously next week. That is obviously it's the bottom of the table clash, I should say. There, if I can get the words out, because whatever the result is when it comes to Central Coast, they'll still be either last or second last, and we play them next week on Saturday, 5 p.m. So it'll be a battle of the bottom. It could be a situation where that team could jump into 10th position if Wellington do lose today against Sydney FC, which most likely is probably going to be the case, I would think, but obviously Sydney have dropped games before in this season, so wouldn't be the weirdest thing in the world if that happens, but it'd be the Wanderers obviously playing away to the Mariners. Hopefully they can come away with a win because they just need to keep in a situation. Oh, actually, sorry, that is the wrong team. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong competition. Perth play Perth at home on Sunday, rather. I was looking at the women's game. It was women's are playing Mariners. The Wanderers will be playing Perth at home, and then obviously we go down the road in Sydney to play the Sydney Derby next week. The week after. So hopefully we can come away with a win against Perth Glory. Perth obviously sitting in 9th position, so it's not, it's not too much out of it ultimately, hopefully. Whereas the Mariners next week have Auckland FC, so that's going to be, and that's playing in Auckland as well, so that's not going to be a great game for them to play, because Auckland will be pretty upset with the way that they played. Friday night, I should say, because they went down, obviously. But we'll see what happens with the Wanderers. But 2-1 loss at home against the Jets, not an ideal situation for them, and especially when you're not switched on for most of the game and really trying and really pushing in the last 10-15 minutes is pretty disappointing in terms of result. But we'll give you obviously an updated table for all the competitions leading into the outro of this video, which will be next. And with a new day and a wardrobe change, that'll be it for this episode of How's My Team. Obviously, just going to give you an update on the tables. Obviously, just going to wait for my apps to load. The women, I will say the Liverpool women were playing the FA Cup. They won 6-0 over the London Bees. So great result there for the women. And there was a few interesting results. Obviously in the Premier League, Aston Villa actually went down to Everton, so they actually lost as well. So pretty much all the top four dropped points in some form or fashion. So Arsenal's still on top with 50 points. Second is Manchester City with 43, so that gap stays at 7 points. Aston Villa stay in third position despite the loss. Really, it was just going to be goal difference being hit there. Fourth position on 36 is Liverpool, so it is a 7-point gap there as well between third and fourth position. Fifth position is Manchester United on 35. Chelsea is still in sixth position on 34. Brentford down to seventh position with 33 points. Newcastle drop as well to 8th with 33. Sunderland jumped to 9th, also on 33. It's just all goal difference there. And Brentford, I believe, is over Newcastle because they've actually scored more goals this year. And then Everton jumped right up to 10th position with 32 points. Fulham dropped to 11th with 31. Brighton dropped to 12th with 29. Crystal Palace stay in 13th position with 28. Tottenham Hotspurs, or I should say just Spurs in general, 14th position with 27. 15th position for Bournemouth with 26. Leeds in 16th position with 25. Nottingham Forest in 17th position with 22 points. West Ham in the relegation zone still with 17. Burnley with 14 in 19th position, and 20th position is still Wolverhampton Wolves, though the Wolves have picked up another draw on the way through because they're now on 8 points. I'm sure yesterday they were on 7, and yes they were, and they go up against Manchester City next game, so that could be a slaughter for them, but it just depends on how they play because they've been playing really good football. But yeah, as I said, obviously Champions League football for Liverpool and Martial, then obviously playing away from home against Bournemouth this week before travelling back home to play the last game of the Champions League next Thursday. So, and then we got Newcastle after that on Sunday at Anfield as well. So next couple of weeks are vitally important, especially in the Champions League race. This game is very important against Martial because that result could realistically change the fortune of what Liverpool's season is going to be like in the Champions League, whether they go into the top 8 and go through straight away, or whether they have to play in a playoff game, which is probably going to be difficult against a team who knows when it comes to that how they're going to be. And a couple of interesting results in the A-League. Sydney FC lost, the men lost to Wellington Phoenix at home. They lost 2-0. Central Coast Mariners, both the men and the women drew in their games. The men, it was actually more important for them just due to the fact that with that result, Mariners do move off the bottom of the ladder. Just a goal difference, which is not ideal. So Auckland FC still on top with 24 points. Sydney FC rue a big chance to jump to the top of the table with their loss against Wellington. So they're in second with 22. Third position is Newcastle Jets with 21. Fourth position, also on 21 points, is Brisbane Roar. Then Melbourne City in fifth position with 20. MacArthur Bulls with the draw against Central Coast move up to sixth position with 20 as well. Seventh position is Adelaide United with 19. Wellington Phoenix jump into 8th position with 18 points with the win over Sydney FC. Ninth position is Victory, Melbourne Victory in 17 points. 10th position is Perth Glory with 16. Then Central Coast move up to 11th position on 12 points. And the Wanderers drop to the bottom with 12 points, just goal difference there. It's -5 for the Central Coast Mariners, and it's -6 for the Wanderers. So that extra goal and that 2-1 loss definitely did hamper us a little bit in terms of points and in terms of goal difference as well. As for the women, I don't think much has changed in terms of the results, but I'll go over the table anyway. So it's Melbourne City on top with 19, Canberra United in second with 18, Central Coast Mariners stay in third position with 18 points with that draw, Melbourne Victory in fourth position with 16, then Newcastle Jets also on 16 in fifth position, Perth Glory in sixth position also on 16 points, so very congested near the bottom of the top six. Wellington Phoenix, 7th position with 15, then Brisbane Roar with 14 in 8th position, 9th position is Adelaide United also on 14 points, Sydney FC in 10th position with 10, and 11th position for the Wanderers on the bottom with 6 points still. So, yeah, pretty crucial games obviously coming up for both teams, for both the Wanderers teams as well as obviously Liverpool, especially in the Champions League game. And we'll just go over the NFL. Obviously, I've changed into my Seahawks jersey. It's a bit dated. Obviously, it's the number 3. So if you remember back then, that's Russell Wilson's number. So this is an old jersey. I don't have a new one with Sam Darnold's number on it or anything like that. Obviously, some of these can be very expensive to buy as well. So had this in storage for a little bit. I haven't worn it too much since the move. In fact, actually, this is the first time I think properly that I've actually worn it since the move. And it was a 41-6 win for the Seahawks in their Divisional Round game against the 49ers. So literally they led from the word go, and literally they led from the word go because they actually got a touchdown off the kickoff. So we're up 7-0, and with the last two games, the 49ers have only scored 9 points, and the defense for Seattle for this season has held them to 3 field goals in 2 games, which is pretty crazy. It ended up being a blowout, like I said, 41-6. I know the 49ers had a lot of injuries this year. Some of them didn't expect to go well in the playoffs. Realistically, going up against the Philadelphia Eagles last week and getting a win there, it's pretty crazy that they managed to do that. So I give them a little bit of props, but they didn't play great yesterday. Realistically, like only one name was really coming up in defense for the 49ers all game long, and that says a lot because, yeah, their defense is pretty decent even with the players that they've got left in there. Obviously, they don't have some of their expert players in there. Obviously, Nick Bosa has been traded as well. And lots of things happening for them. So they go out. Seattle will host the NFC Championship game at home to either the Chicago Bears or the LA Rams. It's a possibility. Obviously, it's an NFC West affair in the championship game, but I'm not going to give too much credit to the Rams because the Bears are also a really good team. They got the second seed for a reason. They played well against the Packers in the second half, trying to work all those points back and come back for a massive comeback win. On the other side, the Broncos went through to the AFC Championship game, so they'll be hosting it because they won in overtime by 3 points over Buffalo. And that game was pretty much seesawing for most of the game. I feel like, yes, Josh Allen was a liability a little bit in that game because he did throw a couple of interceptions. Some of the turnovers, obviously, the Buffalo team were not his fault. Some of them were on the receivers or on the defense. So, it's one of those situations where, and even though the penalties very late in the game in terms of late in the fourth quarter and also in that overtime period, some of that was just, I don't understand why the defense was just giving away penalties. I know they're trying to make plays, but they were grabbing on to people's jerseys and all that type of stuff, and you're not really supposed to do that. And they know that. They know that very well, and they can't do it, and they just kept doing it. So it ended up being a field goal to win it. In terms of the interception in overtime, I feel like I thought that he had enough control for the ball initially when watching it to have that call be a catch. But obviously, I feel like in a way, the refs and the umpires in the game, with the review crew, it's a bit hard to overturn the result. And I think if it was called a catch and it was reviewed to see whether it was a catch and then an interception, or like a fumble reception, like interception for Denver against Buffalo. If the call went the other way, I think that they didn't have enough evidence to overturn it either. So I think it's one of those instances where they went with the call because there wasn't enough evidence to suggest that he had possession of the ball, and was down before the ball got turned over. I think it was really hard to overturn a decision like that, and if it was called a catch and then was reviewed for like a catch and then it was like an interception, obviously if like maybe a second or two later, and the same scenario happened, I think that if the referee called it a catch and they were trying to overturn that and see whether it was an interception or not, I don't think they would have enough evidence to overturn the decision on the other side. So I think it's one of those calls that obviously, yes, did go against Buffalo, but I feel like there wasn't enough evidence to suggest that it would be overturned for that. So obviously the Broncos ended up winning with a field goal halfway through the overtime period against the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo fall out in the Divisional Round and lose in overtime again. So I think that Josh Allen is 0-7, I think, in terms of the playoffs, and in terms of, it's hard because I don't think it's necessarily 0-7, because I think it's only I think he has a losing record in playoff games. I think it's probably like 4-7 or 5-7 or something like that. I don't think it's that bad, but it's like 0-3 in overtime. Even when the rules hadn't been changed, obviously, and the Patriots are up over the Texans at the moment. I think it was 28-15 or something like that. Very late in the game, in the fourth quarter. So we'll see what happens with that result. Obviously, at this point in time, the game is still playing. While I'm recording this, the game is still playing, so I don't know what the result's going to be. Most likely it's going to be Patriots if the result stays the same, which, god damn it, especially with the news that obviously Bo Nix suffered a ankle injury on one of the last plays of the game in overtime. It kind of puts the Broncos, apart from the defense, on the back foot for the AFC Championship game in terms of quarterback position. It's going to be weird, and we'll see what happens, because whether each of these teams playing, like whether it's Texans going through or whether it's Patriots going through, it's going to be tough. Like, the defense for the Broncos is going to be really up for it, but we'll see what happens. But again, like I said, Seattle will play the Chicago Bears or the LA Rams in the NFC Championship game. At the point of when this video goes up, we'll know what the result is. But when I'm recording this, obviously the game hasn't played. It'll play in about half an hour's time, half an hour, 45 minutes it'll start. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, 41-6, pretty convincing win, and the defense was very solid for Seattle again, which is great. And the offense played relatively well. Obviously, yes, scoring 141 points, but all facets of the team played well in the game, which is fantastic to see because we've had games where we've struggled with all three facets and somehow still won some games, have lost some games too. So, yeah, great result and hosting an NFC Championship game at home. We'll see how they go against either the Rams or the Bears. We'll see what happens. But with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this video and this episode of How's My Team. This has been Mario Man 100. You guys have a great day night, and of course, take care. And go Hawks.